What is up, everybody? Jordan here with the Deck Box, back for the first time in like 2 weeks, and I really do apologize for that, guys. Honestly, just had a couple of really busy weeks, and just haven't really had the time to sit down and go through the set review, or really much of anything else, to be honest with you. And right now, there's not a ton of new decks or anything that are coming out. At least until the new set comes, and I haven't had a chance to really sit down and set up those presentations for you. And I figured what I would do is, for those new decks, I'm going to wait till they're on PTCGO. The day they come out, go and get the cards I need and start actually showing some gameplay with those, because I think it definitely adds a little bit more credibility to the decks whenever I actually show the play style and how things are going, as opposed to just kind of slapping them into a PowerPoint and saying, here's my deck list that I haven't done anything with, so I was gonna wait till it was actually an appropriate time to do that. And so now I'm back. I've had that 2-week vacation, I guess, from this, and I think it's good occasionally for YouTubers to get that chance of just a little break here and there, away from our second job, third job, whatever it is for certain people. But I'm back. I've had time to rest up a bit. I read my giant stack of comic books tonight, so I'm ready to go. I think we're good for the set review. So we are going to hop into this Forbidden Light set review. This will be the set coming out May 4th for us, which is really just around the corner. I guess a few weeks out, 3 to 4 weeks. So we're going to hop in and kind of show you these cards. If you haven't seen one of my set reviews before, a couple things that you need to know is, one, I don't go through every single card. I think that's excessive at times, because half the PowerPoint will be me sitting there telling you this card isn't good, this card isn't good, this card isn't good, because there's a lot of filler cards in sets. There just always is, and I don't want to waste your time on those. I want you to see what's valuable, but at the same time, not every card in here is going to be the super valuable ones. I'm covering all GXs, all Ultra Beasts, all Prism Stars, and then anything that people may be currently talking about or may potentially think could be worth your time. And I'll say whether or not I think it's worth your time. So we base that on 2 different sets of criteria. We do have, on the left-hand side, you'll see trainer / energy criteria. There's 3 things we base it on. Playability. Obviously, is the card playable at all? Is it gonna fit into our meta or any meta ever? Then staple level, if it does fit, how much does it fit? Is it a Cynthia, or is it a Kiawe? And what I mean is, not every deck, but most decks have Cynthias, and they have 2 to 3 or 4, whereas Kiawe is played in like 2 decks, and one of those it's like a 1 or 2 of, and the other one it's a 4 of, obviously. But that's what I mean by staple level. Then necessity, I will tell you basically how necessary it is for you to pick up this card. If it's one that you can kind of pass on, don't worry about buying singles of it, or if it's one that you really need to get. For the Pokemon, again, looking at playability, is the card playable? Flexibility, how many decks can it go into? Is it kind of something like Vikavolt? Vikavolt pretty much goes with Tapu Bulu right now, and that's about it. Nothing else. Or is it a Tapu Lele, where it goes into every deck, all except for a couple? But you get the point with flexibility there. And then individuality is a card that is going to be its own deck. For example, Buzzwole. Buzzwole is not only its own deck, but you can also pair it nicely with other things and make multiple different types of Buzzwole decks. Whereas Lele, individuality, is not really there for Lele. Still a great card, but there's no individuality. So they get ranked on 4 different levels here, based on those first 3. Pokeball, Great Ball, Ultra Ball, and Master Ball. Basically, Pokeball is the worst rating it can get. Master Ball is gotta have it. If you don't have this card or a playset of it, you're crazy. So Pokeball is like a card that could maybe be good, but I just don't see it right now. Or a card that's just absolutely terrible. Don't even waste your time on it. Great Ball is one that I kind of consider to be, maybe it's a support Pokemon that will be good in certain decks, but it's like a 2 or 3 of, and or something that I think could potentially be good in the future if certain things fall into place. Ultra Ball is really great card. I'm trying to think. So in the last set we ranked like Glaceon. Actually, Glaceon I think was Master Ball we ranked it at, but that'd be more, now looking back, more like an Ultra Ball. It's a really great card, but it's not really a necessity per se. And then Master Ball is your Tapu Lele's, your Cynthias, these cards that you need to have. They're really, really good, and you're going to see a lot of them. So those are our rankings, and now we're going to move into the cards. Starting off with Palkia GX. There are going to be some repeats from the past set, not very many, but some, because there are a lot of Pokemon that have had reprints, but they've had reprints as different types. So Palkia is the first example of that. It was originally printed as a Dragon type in Ultra Prism, and it was garbage. And so I'm kind of looking to see if the water type could be a little bit better. So obviously the first advantage is it's a water type. So it's going to hit for weakness. It's not going to be weak to fairy. That's great. But it is weak to grass, so that's not fantastic. Still has the same attacks. They are, the first one, for 1 water energy, spatial control. Move any number of energy cards from your bench Pokemon to this Pokemon. So that can be decent to kind of shift some things around. But it has to be in the active, so you're moving this energy onto it, and it will potentially be knocked out the next turn. And 180 is not very tough to hit right now. Then next attack for 3 colors, Hydro Pressure, 60 plus damage. This attack does 20 more damage for each water energy attached to this Pokemon. And then from there, 3 water and 2 colorless, 0 Vanish GX. 150 damage, your opponent shuffles all energy attached to their Pokemon into their deck. I've actually had that used against me, and it really, really sucks late game for them to just come out and get rid of all your energy. If you're playing the right kind of deck, then it shouldn't be much of an issue. We have a lot of single attachment decks right now, so you can set back up pretty quickly, but it can be a setback. So I can see the merit in that GX attack. I could potentially see the second attack, the 60 plus, having some merit. I know they've had things like that in the past, but 60 plus 20, I mean, you get the 3 attachments on, you're swinging for 120. There's a lot of other Pokemon swinging for a lot less. Golisopod, Zoroark. So 3 attachments for 120. I'd much rather hit 120 for 1 attachment, which I know is greedy, but it's a lot better. So to me, playability on this is medium, and really it only goes up that high simply for the fact that this could be tossed into a water deck, mainly for that GX attack to cause some disruption later on. But other than that, not very great. Flexibility very low. It's just going to be water decks, and again, it's not going to be in all of them even, because there are much better Pokemon you'd rather put into your decks. Individuality low. I guess you could potentially make a deck solely around Palkia, where it's all about accelerating the energy, but you'd have to put on a ton of energy to really make it worth your while. This card will pretty much only be good if Fire ever gets insanely, insanely good. Then I could understand putting on the 3 energy to do 120, because you'd be hitting for weakness at that point. So at this point, Palkia GX, the water type, gets a Pokeball, same as a Dragon type. Don't waste your time. Moving on, Magnezone. This is our other, or one of our other alternate typing Pokemon from the Ultra Force set, and that's something I forgot to mention. This is broken down into 2 different sets. SM5 Plus, which is Japan's Ultra Force set. That's the first half of our Forbidden Light set, and then we also get their SM6 set, which is called Forbidden Light. So we're starting with Ultra Force. Forgot to mention that. So we get Magnezone as a lightning type. If you remember the last set, he was a metal type. Worked pretty well with Duskmane Necrozma. Not as well as people would have thought it had worked, or didn't get as much traction as we thought. It definitely kept Guardy away. And I think if Guardy was bigger, you would see this being played a lot more. But anyway, now we're looking at the lightning type. So to me, the lightning type is not as good as the metal type, just face value. Because right now there's really just one lightning deck currently that it's really not even played at tournaments, and that's Raichu GX. We've all toyed with it, but we really don't see it at tournaments, and if we do, we don't see it do well. And I wouldn't see putting this stage 2 with that stage 1. So that's the utility I see of it. If you don't know what this does, basically you can attach as many lightning energy to your Pokemon as you want. So that's it's pretty strong, but it needs a good lightning Pokemon, and in my opinion, it needs a good, big, basic lightning Pokemon. I haven't looked too much at Raichu GX, excuse me, but I'm gonna take a peek at that a little bit more. That could maybe do some good as like a tech card in a lightning deck, but it would still need some other solid lightning type attackers. Right now it just doesn't really do it on its own. Then from there it has this attack, 130 damage for 3 lightning and a colorless Zap Cannon, 130 damage. The Pokemon can't use Zap Cannon during your next turn. So you're not going to use this as its own deck, so individuality is very low. Flexibility is very low. It's got to be in a lightning deck, and even then it can't really go into every lightning deck. It would have to be a big basic if we could find it. Playability, medium, and that's really just because the ability is really strong, but it needs something to go with it. So for now, Magnezone gets the Pokeball. Moving on, Xurkitree. I'm not going to spend too much time on this card, just kind of tell you what it does. First attack for 1 lightning energy, Flash Bullet, 20 damage, your opponent's active Pokemon is not confused. Second attack, 2 lightning and a colorless Cable Ram, 100 damage. If you have 3 prize cards remaining, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. Just across the board, very low playability, very low flexibility, very low individuality. This card is really bland. It's going to be one of those that you pull as your, I assume it's a rare. You're going to pull it as your holo rare, and you're going to be very disappointed because you're going to have white code. I don't really see this showing up in a lot of decks. 3 single energy attachments really sucks. At best, you can paralyze your opponent, and that's at one point in the game, and it's a point that they can actually get around. We have some cards that are talking about 3 or 4 prize cards remaining, and that they can't get around. But having 3 prize cards remaining, they can get around that. You can hit 2 or 4 and just avoid 3. So to me, that's not very great, and again, it's a one-time thing. This isn't going to be one-shotting anything aside from Ho-Oh. But if you have this out there with 3 lightning energy, you're probably running a lightning deck to begin with, so something else is going to take down Koko. So this gets the Pokeball as well, starting off kind of slow with those. This one I'm actually pretty excited about. There's new Rotoms. So the last set we had, gosh, I think it was like 6 or 7 different Rotoms, and you know, there were grass and lightning and fire and water. There's actually a couple water and then a colorless. And this is a reprint of one of those, just as Psychic typing. Has that ability Rotomotor. If there are 9 or more Pokemon tool cards in your discard pile, ignore the attack cost of this Pokemon. And then the attack, 3 Psychic, Plasma Slash, 120 damage. This Pokemon can't attack during your next turn. So, I understand you can't attack during the next turn. That kind of sucks. But if there are 9 tool cards in the discard pile, it's a free attack, does 120 damage, which is solid right now. With Buzzwole going around, with Lucario going around, with Espeon going around. I would much rather take down an Espeon with this than with another Espeon, because they're just going to be back and forth 2 prizes. But if I can give up 1 for 2, it's much more worth it. I know the Rotoms have seen a little bit of play, mostly at Cups and Challenges. People have paired them pretty well with Zoroark, and that makes sense. You can use the trade ability to dump some of your tools, and by doing that, you're pushing yourself closer to that 9 tools in the discard pile. You do have to worry about Garb, but you have 70 HP. I mean, I wouldn't be too worried about that. You're going to dump your items or your tools quickly so that you can use this basic Pokemon free attack to do 120 damage, which takes down a Garbodor with or without weakness. So it's really solid. I really like this card. I think it will go well into some of those decks. They won't have to have their own Psychic tech. They can now just use this Rotom and attack for free, which is really solid. So I'm saying high playability. It technically could be teched into any deck, but it has to be a deck that runs a lot of tool cards, and they're okay with dumping those tool cards. But I'm still saying flexibility very high, just for the fact that you can do it for free. There's a couple different options for decks. Individuality, medium. This could be a deck on its own with the other Rotoms. That's saying it has to have the other Rotoms, and in my opinion, having just Rotoms is not good enough. You need it with like a Zoroark or something. So this gets the Great Ball for now. It's good. It's not great, but I think it will see some play in the future. Moving on, we have Dawn Wings Necrozma, one of our other new Ultra Beasts. Psychic, 130 HP. First attack, Psychic Energy. Gulfstream does 20 plus damage. If you have 6 prize cards remaining, this attack does 20 more damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. And then 3 Psychic Energy, Dusk's Blade, 130 damage, discard 2 energy from this Pokemon. I really do not like this card. The first attack is way too specific, and it's not a point in the game where, whoop, I skipped ahead. You guys know it's a Pokeball. It's at a point in the game where you're not really going to be attacked too much. There's a lot of Pokemon right now that are swinging for 120, so it would be just out of range of knocking you out. Your opponent, if they're smart at all, they're not going to swing on that. And if they're using a Zoroark, it's going to be knocked out anyway because of weakness. They're going to go for something else, and they're going to bring themselves down to 5 or 4 prizes, and then this first attack is useless. So we're just going to say after like the first 2 turns, that first attack's gone. It doesn't make any sense. It's not going to be there. Your opponent's not going to hit this and just poke it without one-shotting it, because they know that this will follow up with a knockout with that, and that's just dumb. So I don't think that attack is worth it. I don't think it's going to see any play. The second attack, 130, is not bad. It one-shots a lot of things, but I would much rather use a Mew EX with a DCE to just annihilate a Buzzwole or something. I know it's a 2-prizer. There's also Baby Mew that can use other Pokemon's attacks. Like, there's a lot of other options that I would much rather use over this Dawn Wings. And I could be totally wrong about that, but to me, the playability, flexibility, and individuality of this card is just not there. So this card does get the Pokeball, as I already mentioned. Moving on, we're all going to try to say this together. Naganadel. Okay? That's how I say it. I've heard Naganadel, Naganadel, whatever. We'll call it Drew. Okay, so Drew, Naganadel, whatever. This is Drew. Drew and Poipole. I can say Poipole. These are 2 Ultra Beasts from the same line. It's actually our first evolving Ultra Beast, which is pretty cool. So we'll look at Poipole first. Psychic, 70 HP. For 1 colorless energy spit poison, your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned. And then Psychic and colorless Corpse Reviver. If this Pokemon is knocked out during your opponent's next turn, your opponent does not take a prize card. So this is a really, really cool basic. It's not fantastic, but if you get those energy on quickly and you're not able to set up for some reason, you can just use that second attack, and that way if your opponent knocks you out, they don't take a prize. So it's kind of a waste of their time anyway. It does slow you down because now you have to reset up Poipole, but it at least keeps them from advancing their board state. And you could choose to avoid it if you want them out of a certain board state. Then Naganadel, Drew, evolves from Poipole. The first attack is really, really solid. For 1 colorless energy, Beast Ride, 20 times damage. This attack does 20 damage for each Ultra Beast you have in play. So let's do some math here. Most of the time, you're probably going to have a Layla on your bench. That's fine. So we take 1 away. Then we have 4 on our bench, the 1 in the active. Let's even take 1 of those away. Say we have a Rangaroo or Octillery, or we just don't have another Ultra Beast, okay? So we'll say we have 3 on the bench, 1 in the active. Okay, you're swinging for 80 with 1 colorless energy. Choice Band, 110. Okay, we're in a meta right now where Psychic is in a really, really good spot. Okay, so you're hitting weakness on a lot of things. Buzzwole, Lucario. I think this could bring this combined with an Espeon in the future. Like, all these Psychics are kind of starting to pop up again. I think it might eventually be too much for Buzzwole to handle. Now the downside is it's weak to Psychic as well, so maybe you'll see a battle of Psychic Pokemon, and eventually it'll kind of stop people from playing that, and then they're back to Buzzwole. Who knows? But I'm thinking that this could bring an end to Buzzwole and Lucario, because it's just such a solid attack. It sets up so quickly. You bridge it, get a Choice Band and an Energy, and this guy's off and running. Like, it's just busted. And it is one of the most techable cards. It can go in any deck that runs any decent amount of Ultra Beasts. I mean, you look at any Buzzwole list, it runs 3 Buzzwole. That's good enough. Chances are you'll have 2 of them out at a time. You're doing at least 60, Choice Band 90, 180, which is enough to knock out a Buzzwole or a Lucario. I get it, but that's a solid number there. And all you have to do is kind of tech in a couple more Ultra Beasts, and you're doing fine. I don't think it's too much to ask for, let alone it can be its own deck as well, where it's like, and I've heard a lot of people talking about this already, it's like an Ultra Beast, kind of a tech deck with just all the Ultra Beast types together. They do their own different things, but they all sync really well together. But I digress. We'll move on to the second attack. For a Psychic, double colorless energy, Jet Tackle, 110 damage. This attack's damage isn't affected by resistance. So again, looking at that, swings 220 on a Buzzwole, on a Lucario. It's doing great damage. And then the final attack for 3 colorless, Stinger GX. Each player shuffles their prize cards into their deck. Then each player takes 3 cards from the top of their deck and puts them face down as their prize cards. So if you are losing, if your opponent is down to 1 prize and you're losing terribly, you still have 6 prizes left, or 4 or 5. You use this GX attack, it's now an even game. They just gain 2 prize cards, you drop 3 prize cards, and now all you have to do is take 2 to 3 knockouts, and you're golden. They have to do the same, but they've expended a lot of resources doing what they need to do to get down to 1 prize card. I have a feeling it'll be a little bit more difficult for them. This is a really, really solid GX attack, and again, it's techable. It's only 3 colorless energy, so if you choose to tech this into a deck, that GX attack would not be a bad one to use mid to late game to help your board state out. So, in summation, very high playability, very flexible, and very individualistic. You can do your own deck with this, and there's multiple different decks you can do with this, whether by itself or with the Ultra Beast tech combo, pair it with Garbodor, just all sorts of crazy cool things. So this card for sure gets the Master Ball. It is insanely good. Pick up your copies of this now while you have the chance, and don't let the opportunity slip away with Drew. Moving on, Garchomp. This is another one from Ultra Prism that was reprinted. I was actually really super excited about this card when it first came out as Dragon type, and I have been even more excited by the Fighting type. I know it hasn't had a lot of showing currently, but I think not hitting weakness really makes a big difference. If you know what these Pokemon do, the reason I have the whole set up there is because Gible and Gabite both have Ascension, so they can evolve quickly, but they're also fighting types as well, so now we can use Brooklet Hill if we need to set those up, maybe use a different supporter our first turn to set things up quicker, because before you're having to use a Bridget, some people are using Vulpix to get their items, so I'd much rather use Brooklet Hill, set things up, play a Cynthia or Sycamore or whatever, and just dig through my deck, get whatever Pokemon I need out, and just get rolling, and then have my turn 2 Garchomp and Lucario so I can start doing whatever I want to. But anyway, so the first attack on Garchomp does 50 damage, it's a snipe, and the second attack does 100 plus. If you play a Cynthia, you do 200 damage. So with a Choice Band, that's 230. If your fighting energy is now a strong energy, it's 250. You're one-shotting everything. It's insane. Better yet, all you need is either a strong energy or a Choice Band, either or the new Diancie Prism Star, or Regirock EX, one of those, and the second attack, you won't need the Cynthia, and you one-shot Zoroarks. So that's really, really solid. That's important right now, and I think that really kind of boosts the playability of this card. It makes it a lot better. So playability, I'm saying, is high. Flexibility is very low. This isn't something you're going to just tech into any deck. It's pretty much, if you're playing it, it's probably going to be the core of its deck. Unless you maybe try like a Zoroark thing, where you do heavy Zoroark line and then like a 2-1-2 line of this, you know, like they did with Gardevoir. I could see that, but I think there's better options. Individuality, very high, because again, it's its own deck and that's about as far as it goes. But this card still gets the Ultra Ball from me. I may be overhyping it, but I've been excited about this one for a long time, and I don't see a scenario where this is bad per se. Moving on, Lucario GX. I'm not going to talk too much about this card because we've already got it as a promo, but if you don't have it yet, this is your chance to get it, pulling from these boxes. But if you don't know what it does, the first attack does 30 damage base, and then if you just evolve this turn, it does an additional 90, so you're up to 120. So if you're doing the math, that one-shots a Zoroark GX with weakness. Then the second attack for 2 fighting and a colorless does 130, which is again a solid attack to move from. But the GX is really solid, 30 times damage. You do 30 damage times the number of damage counters on this Pokemon. So you're just absolutely wiping things out with this card. It sets up very quickly, it pairs very well with Zoroark, it pairs well with Lycanroc, with Buzzwole. There's a few different variants right now, and they all seem to be doing pretty well. And like I said, it's a pretty easy setup card. Hits weakness, it's really good. It has results behind it already, so it's not very difficult to give this card rankings. Very high playability, high flexibility because of all the different types of decks it can go into. Individuality, I'm only giving it medium, and the reason is I don't think this card could really run on its own. I've seen success with it with other Pokemon with it, you know, heavy Zoroark line, heavy Buzzwole, heavy Lycanroc, even heavy Garb. But this doesn't seem to be on its own, okay? Because it just makes it a little bit more difficult if it's on its own, a little bit weaker. So it does get the Ultra Ball though, still really, really solid card, and we've seen that already. Next, moving on, we have another Buzzwole being printed. This is a new Ultra Beast, and I really like this card. First attack, Sledgehammer, 1 fighting energy, 30 plus damage. If your opponent has 4 prizes remaining, this attack does 90 more damage. So I know I talked about the specificity earlier with I forget which card. Oh, Dawnwings Necrozma. And I talked about how, you know, that specificity kind of hurts it. This one, it doesn't hurt as bad because 4 prize cards, there's a really high chance that your opponent will reach the 4 prize card point at some spot. But it'll be after you've already set up a little bit, so it's much more attainable. With Dawnwings, you have to have 2 specific things. You have to be damaged in some way, and you want it to be a substantial amount, and your opponent has to have 6 prizes left. So it's a little bit different, and with this fighting weakness, it makes it a lot better. The second attack does a base of 80 damage for 2 fighting and colorless, swing around 80 plus damage, flip 2 coins. This attack does 20 more damage for each heads, so that can be relevant, bumping it up to 120. That one-shots Lucarios, it one-shots Garbodors, things like that. But what's great is you don't even need the 2 coin flips to take down Zoroarks. All you need is a Choice Band, and that's good. Or Strong Energy Diancie, or, you know, Strong Energy Regirock, whatever. Just some combo to get you up to at least 110, and it's not really a heavy combo, to be honest with you. So this card will be really, really good against that. It's a great 1 prize attacker. So very high playability from me, low flexibility. It's not going to go into a lot of different decks. It'll just be these fighting decks. Very low individuality. This is not going to be its own deck. This is going to be your 1 prize attacker that you use, your non-EX GX attacker that you use against like Koopas and things like that. But it does get the Great Ball. This you'll want to pick up at least a couple copies, if not 3, and it will do some good for you. Next, moving on to our Metal Pokemon, Dialga GX. This is another one that we had a reprint of. So we've already seen it in play, but it was a Dragon Pokemon before. And I'll be honest, like this card, I don't 100% know what I fully think of it yet as far as its success. I think it's a really good card. I don't think that it's going to go very well on its own. I don't think it ever will. It's not made for that. And the sad thing is, like, I think this is a great card, but I don't even see it in every metal deck I see now, or at least every Duskmane deck. I thought I'd see it a lot more because it was big basics and the GX attack is really solid, but it's not even in all of those. So based on its results, I already kind of know about the card. I know how it does. If you don't know what it does, first attack is basically Shaman's ability, except as an attack you get to, it's called Clock Up, you get to clock up to 6 cards. Second attack is Shred, not affected by any effects on your opponent's Pokemon. It does 80 damage, and then the GX attack is 150 damage for 3 metal and a double colorless, and I forget the name of it. Timeless GX. How could I forget that? And it's a really, really good attack. You know, Choice Bane, you're taking on a Lele or another big basic, and you get to immediately go into your next turn. You skip your opponent's turn, it's your turn again. So it's a really, really good GX attack, but you can only use it once. So even when this card gets played, it only gets played as one of. So very medium playability. I guess very medium would be the same as well. Can't get much more medium than medium. Flexibility, low. It really only goes into these metal decks, and even then, not all of them. And individuality, very low. This will never be its own deck. This card does still get the Pokeball. It's not fantastic. Still might be worth picking up one, but honestly, if I'm playing Duskmane and I put Dialga in it, I'd rather have the Dragon type. And I know that sounds odd because it doesn't hit for weakness, but if I need to hit for weakness in that deck, which I don't because everything's hitting for 230 plus, if I need to hit for weakness, I can use the other Pokemon. But what the Dragon type offers is a Pokemon that's not weak to fire, which at certain times could help us. So that is why I prefer the Dragon over this one. Next, moving on, we have Duskmane Necrozma. This is honestly another Ultra Beast that kind of disappoints me. And I'm really surprised to say that because it's a pretty cool looking card. I thought it'd be much better. First attack, Dawn Dagger for 1 metal energy. Choose one of your opponent's Pokemon EX or Pokemon GX. This attack does 60 damage to that Pokemon. This attack's damage isn't affected by weakness or resistance. So it's a nice snipe, I guess, but it has to be an EX or GX. And if it's in a metal deck, chances are they don't have to snipe a final 60 to take down a Pokemon. because they hit so hard already. So that's why I'm kind of like, not very necessary. And then Metal, colorless, rusty nail does 100 damage. If your opponent has one prize card remaining, this attack does 100 more damage. So it can swing for a little bit more. It can swing up to 200. But honestly, the only thing that really has 200 is like Glaceon, your hit and weakness 4. And then Buzzwalls, of course, and Ho-Oh and things like that, they have 190. What hits 190 is the Solgaleo Prism Star with a Choice Band. I'd much rather use that card over this one. I don't really see this one seeing a ton of play, and really not flexible at all. It's a metal Pokemon. It's going in one type of deck, and very low individuality. This won't ever be its own deck because it just can't hit the numbers. So this does get the Pokeball. Honestly, not worth your time. Maybe pick up one if you ever need a tech in the future to do that final sniping, but I don't think you do with the current metal Pokemon that we have. Next, moving on to Arceus Prism Star. So this one's odd. So it has the ability to prevent all effects of your opponent's attacks, excluding damage done to this Pokemon. So it can't be poisoned, burned, confused, put to sleep, paralyzed, yada yada. And then the attack, Trinity Star, for 1 colorless energy, 30 damage. You can only use this attack if you have a Grass, Water, and Lightning Pokemon on your bench. Search your deck for up to 3 basic energy cards and attach them to your Pokemon any way you like. Then shuffle your deck. There's 2 instances where this card will be useful. If you're playing a Tapu Bulu deck and you're playing Octillery in there for some reason, and you have your Vikavolt out, or maybe you cut Vikavolt altogether because you have Arceus to set up the energy, and you have Octillery, you have like a Baby Coco, or even the GX if you wanted, and then the Bulu out. So there's that option, which is not good. I'd much rather just do Vikavolt. It seems much more consistent. This is also one of cards, so you can't count on it. And then there's also the option of maybe like the Rotoms, but again, they're not going to be using any energy if everything goes right. And if they are using energy, it's not all going to be the same. Like it's going to be really jacked up. I don't think this card is going to really see any play, at least not right now. Maybe something will come out in the future that'll be absolutely insane with this card, but right now, swinging for 30 damage, setting up a little bit of energy, it's not great. We have things that set up energy as abilities, and they're much, much better. So playability low, flexibility very low, and individuality very low. This is a garbage card in my opinion. It's a Pokeball. Do not pick it up. This is on the same level as Cyrus. Just don't waste your time. Moving on, Beastring. This card is actually really, really solid. So it reads, you may only play this card when your opponent has 3 or 4 prize cards remaining. Search your deck for up to 2 basic energy, reveal them, and attach them to one of your Ultra Beast Pokemon, and then shuffle your deck. Awesome, awesome card. It is a max elixir for any Pokemon that you have in play, but it's double, and you get to attach them just right away. And it's an item, so you can play 4 of these in one turn if you really want to just go off, and that's absolutely possible. The downside is it does have to be an Ultra Beast, but that's not really a downside because we're seeing the Ultra Beast get a lot more play, and I think we're going to be seeing that more and more in the future. That's kind of the way things are going. There's lots of Ultra Beasts in the game. They're all going to be released as cards. There's even some that we haven't seen yet. There's like a Cotton Candy Clown one, I don't even know what that's called, and then Stack Attacka or whatever. So you've got more cards coming. You've got a lot of good ones right now. This card will be played, and the fact that it's 3 or 4 prizes, your opponent's not going to be able to get around that. At some point in the game, you'll be able to use this card, and when you do, it's going to bring you back into the game and potentially win you games. It's just an insanely good card. So playability for me is very high. Staple level medium, because again, it's only for Ultra Beast. It's not going to be in every deck, but it's very, very good. And the necessity is very high to get this card. Get it as a playset. Don't pass this one up. We're looking at an Ultra Ball card for sure. This card will see a ton of play. Moving on, Ultra Recon Squad. Won't talk too much about this one because I don't think it's that good. Discard up to 2 Ultra Beasts from your hand, then draw 3 cards for each card you discarded in this way. So you can potentially draw 6 cards. Or you could use a Cynthia or any other draw card or draw support that we have in the future whenever things rotate out. We've got Lily that can get you up to 6. We've got Sophocles if you really need to get past 6, dump 2 of whatever. You can dump 2 of whatever cards and get 4 cards. Not as much, but still. The only reason I would see this card seeing a ton of play is potentially if you have maybe like a crazy Ultra Beast deck that's like teched out and then maybe in a certain matchup, you know you're not going to need certain Ultra Beasts, so you dump those. So I could see that being useful. Or if there's ever something like Night March again, where the more you have in your discard, the more damage it does. That would be the playability I would see, but right now it's not there. So I'm going to say low or medium playability, excuse me, low staple level for sure. This will only go on Ultra Beast decks, obviously, excuse me. And the necessity is low to pick it up. Don't worry too much about it. You'll probably end up pulling some of these. So I'm personally the type that says whatever trainers or supporters you pull, just keep a playset. It's not going to hurt you because it could eventually be good. And at worst, you lose out on 40 cents because you didn't sell these. So anyway, this card gets a Pokeball. Wouldn't waste too much time on it. If you get it, great, hold on to it. But if not, don't worry. Next, looking at Wake. This card kind of surprised me. I hadn't looked too much into it before, and now that I look more into it, I'm actually really excited about it. It's Supporter, discard 2 water energy from your hand in order to play this card. Search your deck for up to 2 cards and put them into your hand. Then shuffle your deck. So, the initial reaction that everyone sees is discard 2 water energy, draw 2 Aqua Patch, play the 2 Aqua Patch, attach 2 energy for free, plus your attachment for turn. That's 3 energy. That sets up a Glaceon. That sets up a Ninetales. That sets up a Lapras. It's going to make water really, really good. I'm really excited about this card. Looking at it more, it's going to be really, really good. That's the only way to say it. Really, really, really good. The playability for it's high. Like I just mentioned, 3 different water decks, and those kind of intermingle sometimes. Sometimes they don't. Maybe this will make Palkia decent. Maybe. The staple level, though, is low, just because it has to be water decks, and right now water's not doing fantastic. This could put those kind of at the top, but we'll have to see. Necessity, I'm still saying low, because it is just a water deck. There's really no Fire Weak decks right now. It's not going to be your top priority. Again, you'll probably end up pulling some of these. Maybe just hold on to them. But I still think it's a really good card. It does get a great ball. This we'll see play in the future. It's yet to be determined how much, but I'm excited to see. Next, moving on to Ultra Space. This is a stadium card. Reads once during each player's turn, and that player may search their deck for an Ultra Beast, reveal it. Hey, we just got a new subscriber in the middle of this video. I'm excited. Sorry about that, guys. Anyway, shout out to Savage No Scope for subscribing. Ultra Space, back to reading it. You get to search your deck for an Ultra Beast, reveal it, and put it into your hand. Then that player shuffles their deck. So, if that doesn't sound familiar to you, you haven't read Brooklet Hill recently. It's basically Brooklet Hill, but for Ultra Beast. However, I think, let me double check this. I'm pretty sure Brooklet Hill, it has to go straight to the bench. Yeah, it has to go straight to the bench. So there is an advantage here with Ultra Space, being able to search out an Ultra Beast, and it doesn't have to be a basic. So Naganadel, Drew, you can search him out from your deck to evolve. So this opens up a little bit more possibility. It is restrictive because of the Ultra Beast, but definitely a little bit more flexibility for this card, and it's going to make Ultra Beast decks really, really good. That tech deck I was talking about where Naganadel basically sets up the bench with a bunch of Ultra Beasts and just hits for a lot of damage. This will go really, really well on that to guarantee you get some damage output. So for me, playability is very high on this card. Medium staple level because, again, it has to be Ultra Beast focus decks, but we are going to have some of those. Necessity is high. I would say get your playsets of this simply because we know that we're going to have good decks that will use this card. So this does get an Ultra Ball. Very playable card. It's going to be really, really solid. Pick it up. Last, for the Ultra Force portion of this video, Beast Energy Prism Star. It's a special energy card. This card provides colorless energy. While this card is attached to an Ultra Beast, it provides every type of energy, but provides only 1 energy at a time. The attacks of the Ultra Beast this card is attached to do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So, let's do some simple math here. Let's use an Ultra Beast, for example. We have Buzzwole right now. Okay. September, Buzzwole loses strong energy, so you kind of lose that immediate boost of 20 damage. But you get Mr. Beast Energy here, who is a rainbow energy that does no damage to your Pokemon. So you're doing 30, plus the 30 from Beast Energy. So you're already swinging for 60. If you have a choice band on, and in the active is some sort of GX, you're swinging for 90. You're two-shotting big basics with Jet Punch. If you have a Diancie Prism Star, which we haven't gotten to yet, but it adds 20 damage to your fighting type Pokemon's attacks. You're now swinging for 110 with those. And that one-shots a Zoroark with weakness and gets to snipe the bench. This Beast Energy is going to be so good beefing up these little attacks to go just a little bit further, add the Choice Band, and one-shot these massive Pokemon. This card is insanely good. This will see a ton of play. I'm glad it's just a Prism Star, because if it wasn't, this card would be absolutely busted. To me, this is the best Prism Star card we have seen. We had Super Boost Energy and everyone lost their minds over that. It was not a good card. I've not seen much play of it. The fact that you have to get 3 stage 2s out, just makes that card very unattainable. This is very reasonable. It's almost to the point of being broken, but the fact that you can only have one of it makes it very fair. It's going to go really well into some of these Ultra Beast decks. So very high playability, medium staple level because it has to be Ultra Beast, but we're going to see lots of those. And necessity is very high. You really need to pick up this card. It is an Ultra Ball, and that's simply because it's not a staple in every single deck. Moving on to the Forbidden Light portion of the video. This is the second half. We're starting off with an Ultra Beast, and I'm not going to spend much time on it because it is trash. Colorless Energy, High Jump Kick, 20 damage. Then 2 Grass Energy and a Colorless Energy, White Ray, 90 damage. If you have 1 prize card remaining, this attack does 90 more damage. The fact of the matter is, there's 100 other Grass cards that I would much rather use over this card to hit for 180. Not 100, but there's a lot of them. There's a lot of other cards, period, that I would much rather use to hit 180 at the end of my game when I'm trying to survive. Trying to attach 3 energy right at the end of the game to survive and take your last 2 prizes to try to beat your opponent who's only got 1 prize card left. This just doesn't seem the way to do it. It's not going to do very well. Really, there's not a ton that Grass is hitting weakness for. I mean, Lycanroc's pretty big, but Lycanroc usually plays something else that could really easily deal with this. Only having 110 HP makes it very weak to Zoroark. So to me, Pheromosa, very low across the board Pokeball. Moving on, Alolan Marowak. This is actually a pretty cool card. I'm not going to say it's great, but it could potentially be good. With Baby Volcanion moving out, this could be a way to accelerate some energy for our fire decks, or actually any deck, and you'll see why. So Alolan Marowak has the first attack for no energy cost. Limbo. Search your deck for up to 2 basic energy cards and attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like. Then shuffle your deck. So, like I said, this can go into any deck. Excuse me, and help you to accelerate your energy onto your Pokemon. The other positive that I forgot to mention, Cubone is a fighting Pokemon. So if you play Brooklet Hill in a deck, you can search him out, make that a little bit easier for you, and then Marowak can evolve the following turn. So that's a decent thing. Limbo is free, so it goes into any deck. In the second attack, Alola Circle, double colorless energy, 20 times damage. This attack does 20 damage times the number of Pokemon you have in play with Alolan in its name. So the attack really kind of hurts it because it has to be in a very heavy Alolan based deck. So that would have to be like Alolan Ninetales, Alolan Saiyan Slash, Alolan Golem. You're not going to see all those paired together. You're not going to see this really in there. Potentially in the future, we might see a really heavy Alolan deck where it needs a nice fire tech Pokemon, and I would say this would be the one to go with. You know, you just strap on a DCE and you're swinging for really solid numbers. But as of right now, I say it's not really there. So playability, medium, simply for the fact it could go into a fire deck for that first attack. Very low flexibility. It has to be really an Alolan deck to make use of the second attack. However, at the same time, it could go into any deck to use that first attack, but you wouldn't really want to set up a stage 1 to do something like that. There's much more efficient ways to add energy. Individuality, very low. You're not going to have a deck based around this card. It gets the Pokeball. Cool concept. Would be much better on a basic, but I think it'd be a little busted on a basic if you ask me. So, moving on, Delphox. This is one of the cards that, and sorry about the scan, didn't quite go through correctly, but this is one of the cards that I'm looking at and thinking it could be good. If the time was ever right, if fire ever got big, this would be a fun one to give a shot. The ability, Magical Torch. Once during your turn before you attack, you may leave your opponent's active Pokemon burned. So you're doing an initial 20 damage, every turn, whether or not Delphox is in the active. That's really solid. The attack swings for 150, fire spin for 2 fire and a double colorless, discard 2 energy from this Pokemon. So seems like a high energy cost, but with burn and then swinging for 150, potentially 180 with Choice Band, you're one-shotting a lot of different Pokemon. And that's invaluable. I mean, that's really, really solid to have. Swinging for 200 is no small feat for a non-GX Pokemon. Now, downside is you do have to get a lot of energy on there. And I understand that it's not the easiest thing to do, but in my mind, I see the DCE and I say play with something like Zoroark. Use Zoroark, kind of set things up. You get the 2 fire energy on, you get a DCE, and you're ready to go. Maybe you play multi-switch or something. So I think you pair those two well, they get the pieces set up, and you're kind of rolling. You make Zoroark more of the core, but you use Delphox as kind of like the fire tech. So yeah, I think the card's pretty cool. As far as discarding the 2 energy, just discard the DCE and then strap on 1 DCE the next turn, so it's just 1 attachment. So playability for me, I say it's pretty high playability. Very low flexibility. This only goes in one type of deck, and it would pretty much be Zoroark Delphox. So individuality is high because of that. It's just the Delphox deck. So I'm just giving it a great ball for now. This could be one that could be fun in the future to mess with. And again, it depends on if fire is ever like crazy necessary. If metal ever gets big or grass ever gets big, this could be a good one prize attacker to consider in the future. Next, looking at Pyroar. This is one that I was excited about at first, and then I kind of looked at it a little bit more and I was kind of let down, if I'm being honest. It has the ability to Unnerve whenever your opponent plays an item card or supporter card. Prevent all effects of that card done to this Pokemon. So that's great. It can't be Guzman up or anything. It can't be Pokemon Catchered up. So that's really solid. However, Field Blower can still affect it because it doesn't actually affect Pyroar. It affects the item. So it really doesn't get around a lot. It's really just those gust effects. And then it has the attack for a fire, double colorless, dominate Fang, 80 plus damage. If Lysander Labs is in play, this attack does 60 more damage. So you can potentially do 140 damage. The downside is Lysander Labs makes it to where no one can use they can use tool cards, but they don't have any effect. So it's not like you can attach a Choice Band with this and be swinging for 170. 140 is the cap on it. Now the positive is, if you're doing that and you're swinging for 140, it means your opponent's not using their tool cards. But really the main tool card is Choice Band, which isn't going to affect Pyroar anyway. So it's kind of wasted. Again, the only reason I would see playing this would be with Zoroark in a format where fire is very big. A stage 1 would be great for a fire and a DCE. That's perfect. I think that's pretty solid. Again, cutting off their items or their tools at that point would be good because their Choice Bands would not affect Zoroark. So I could see that being very, very useful in a future format where potentially fire does get big. So I would keep my eye on this one if that happens. If it happens, make this your first look. So playability, medium. Flexibility, very low. It has to be pretty much on its own with Zoroark, like I said. So individuality is high for that reason. For now, it does get a great ball because it could potentially be good in the right format. I don't think this is a bad card. Right now, though, I would keep it on the back burner. Next, looking at Greninja GX. I know everyone's really excited about this card. I listed the whole line on the screen for you guys for a couple reasons. Well, actually, really just one reason. They all have some sort of uniqueness about them. The first one gets free retreat. Excuse me. The first Froakie gets free retreat if it has a water energy attached to it. But I would much rather attach a water energy setting up my bench or putting it on the active to use bubble or something. I wouldn't use it to retreat because at that point something else is in danger. The next Froakie has 70 HP, which is really solid. The current one only has 60. So if I'm you, I'm looking at the 70 HP one. The downside is it doesn't have bubble, so you consider how strong that is. I know it sounds really silly, but how many Greninja players have won games because of Froakie's bubble? Lots of them. So, yeah. Next, looking at Frogadier, the main thing to look at is the ability. Quick Shuriken, when you play this card from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. So we're starting to look at some more sniping, this time with an ability. If it sounds familiar, it's because it's been done before, back with the bats lines that would snipe. I think a lot of people have talked about Landorus bats from back in the day. That was before I played, and they really enjoyed that deck. And a lot of people are talking like maybe Buzzwole could be the new Landorus paired with this. And I haven't even gotten to the Greninja yet, but its ability also snipes. When you play it from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you put 3 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. So same concept. The downside is you're using a big stage 2, which I guess that's the same concept as Landy Bats, so sorry about that, but you're using a 2 prize Pokemon as opposed to just a 1 prize support Pokemon with a 2 retreat cost as opposed to free retreat like Bats were before. So it's a lot different. You're looking at 2 very different things, but what I would say is don't look at it with Buzzwole so much. I mean, consider it, but I wouldn't put all your money in that. I would look at doing this by itself. I would look at doing this potentially with the Glaceon. And I know it's a stage 1 with a stage 2, but Glaceon isn't really a stage 1 because of the Energy Evolution Eevee. So you could use Glaceon in the active while you set up your Greninjas on the bench and you're sniping and you're sniping, you're sniping. Glaceon's GX attack does really well whenever there's sniping involved. So I think it could be really cool. I think you could pair those nicely. You get to use your abilities while your opponent does not. And then there's the option of using this by itself. That's definitely always an option because it has decent attacks, does 110 damage with that second attack, and you get to shuffle. You may shuffle this Pokemon and all the cards attached to it into your deck. So if you're about to be knocked out, it's a great time to use it. Or if you want to recycle these abilities and start from scratch, also a really great way to use it. And then the GX, Water Double Colorless Shadow Assassin GX's tech does 130 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So great sniping. End of the game, you need 1 prize, and you see that Pokemon, but you can't get it up because you've used all your Guzmas, but you still have your GX. That's the time to use it. Take your final prize, or take final 2 if you've hit a GX and it's protected on the bench. So overall, I think this is a solid card, very playable. It's going to see play in multiple different types of decks. People are definitely going to be experimenting with this. Also, it would be very great with a Zoroark deck. Running DCEs, it'd be very playable. Flexibility high, as we mentioned, lots of different decks that it can go into, and individuality very high, can be on its own as well. This does get the Ultra Ball. It's going to be a great card, and we will definitely be seeing some play with it at major tournaments. Next, moving on to Volcanion Prism Star. This card was actually a lot better the second time around that I looked at it. It has the ability Jet Geyser. Once during your turn before you attack, you may discard a water energy from your hand. If you do, your opponent switches their active Pokemon with one of their bench Pokemon. So, a couple reasons this is really solid. It is Lycanroc's ability, but with a discard. So you can use this attack over and over again. It's not like you have to evolve or anything. It's also on a basic. It's only a 1 prizer. And you have Aqua Patch. So discarding that water energy is not a big deal. It's actually a great thing. You discard it, then you use Aqua Patch to bring it back onto your bench and just keep setting things up. So really solid card already just with that ability. And then looking at the attack, it does 100 damage and then does 20 damage to all of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So it's a really good snipe. It's not going to be like the core of what you're going to try to do. It's really more if you just need to set something up. The main focus for me would be putting this in a water deck to use that Gust ability and set up energy at the same time. I think that's the main thing, is setting up energy more so than the Gust. But they pair very nicely together. This is going to be a really good card. If I play any water decks, I think I'll try to toss one of these in there if I can find the space. So for me, very high playability, low flexibility. It's got to be a water deck, but there's lots of there's various different concepts of water decks. You could put it with the new Greninja that we just talked about. That would be really nice, and it would help set things up. Individuality very low. It's a Prism Star. It's not going to be by itself, but it is a good card. It gets Ultra Ball, and I know Great Ball would normally be the 2 to 3 copies. So why does 1 copy get Ultra Ball? It's because it's a Prism. It can't really get past that. But this Prism is actually good. You will probably want to pick this up if you're going to be playing any water decks at all. Next, looking at Malamar, this card has been pretty hyped as well, and rightfully so. This is actually one that I'm really excited about. I actually did a deck profile over Ultra Necrozma Malamar, I called it, what is it, Ultra Squids, I think is what I called it. Pretty cool deck, pretty cool concept. This was, again, another deck that was around before my time, the electric deck, where you just accelerate energy from the discard pile onto your big basics, and you just swing for a lot of damage. And that's basically the new concept that they have given us this time. The ability Psycho Recharge. Once during your turn before you attack, you may attach a Psychic Energy card from your discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon. That is really the core of this card. Doing 60 damage with his attack is really not what we're looking at. It's that ability. And so this card will be good if Ultra Necrozma is good, which we haven't gotten there yet, but spoilers, it's a good card. So that helps us to evaluate this card a little bit better. This will be a great energy accelerator for that card. If you have, once we get there, you'll understand that it needs the energy acceleration. So for me, it's a very, very playable card because we know there's already a deck that's out there for it that it's going to really help with. It does have very low flexibility, though. I mean, this is really the only time I can think that it would be good is with that one card specifically, and then individuality, you're not going to have this in a deck on its own. So to me, it is a great ball. You will definitely want to pick up a few copies of this, but it's not going to be something that you're going to toss in every deck. It's pretty much a one deck type of thing. So if you don't want to play that deck, don't waste your time on this. But I would say waste your time on playing that deck. It's going to be good. So moving on, Tyrantrum. If you guys have seen any of my previous videos, you'll know that I've been very into the fossils lately, mainly Rampardos. I think it's just a really good card, and I think Tyrantrum could potentially be the next good fossil because there's more support coming out. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But first we'll look at Tyrunt. For 1 fighting energy, does crunch, 20 damage, flip a coin. If heads, discard an energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. So potential disruption there, and potential knockouts on little basics like Zoruas and Eevees and things like that with a strong energy, or with Diancie Prism Star. Not too bad for a basic. And then hammer in 40 damage. Then moving on to Tyrantrum, the ability Tyranno Heart. If you have the same amount or fewer Pokemon in play than your opponent, this Pokemon's attacks do 60 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon, and it takes 30 less damage from attacks. So it essentially bumps up to 190 HP at that point. And you're swinging for an additional 60. And if you see its attack, 2 fighting and colorless, crunch, 100 damage, discard 1 energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. So you're getting to discard energy there. You're swinging for 160 potentially. Choice Bane, you're swinging for 190. That's good enough to take down all of our big basics. And then if you have your Diancie Prism Star on the bench, which I know I keep talking about Diancie, we're getting there, I swear. You're swinging for 210. Those are all the magic numbers. This card could be good if it's put into the right deck. I don't think it'll be on its own, but it will be the core of some decks. Potentially with Buzzwole, like I've done with Rampardos. That's what I would do with Tyrantrum. People will potentially try this whole Talonflame thing. I don't really like it, if I'm being honest. I'd much rather have it with the Buzzwole text or Zoroark to set up over Talonflame. So that's where my mind is with that. But something I heard mentioned on Omnipoke, I want to give them credit for this idea, but something they were talking about was Shining Celebi. If you played Shining Celebi, you could use Tyrunt's attacks, that first one for a fighting energy, do an additional 60 damage while you're still setting up, because 3 energy is not always the quickest to set up. But if you use a Shining Celebi, you're doing 20 damage base, you get the additional 60 from Tyrantrum's ability, so that's 80. Choice Band 110. If it's a strong energy, you're at 130. Like, this could really build up, and you could potentially discard an energy. So I really like that concept of using Shining Celebi while you continue to set up those 3 energies, because once you evolve into Tyrantrum, it's pointless. You're not going to be able to use it until you get those 3 energy. So I think playing Shining Celebi with this would actually be pretty cool. And I'm going to have to try that concept out as well, but I wanted to give Omnipoke credit. I didn't want to say I'm taking that from them, but that was a really neat idea that I heard them mention, and I think that actually kind of boosts this card a little bit if you play it appropriately. So for me, the playability is high, flexibility is medium. If it goes into anything, it'll be with like Zoroark or other fighting Pokemon. And then individuality is high because it'll kind of be its own deck. It's getting a great ball because, like any fossil, it's really unknown until we actually give it a shot at how good it will be. Next, moving on to Zygarde GX. This card is broken. Okay, so let me walk you through all the good things about this. So, just starting off on the first attack, for a DCE Cell Connector, 50 damage, attach 2 fighting energy from your discard pile to this Pokemon. So, your second turn, or you're going second. This is a basic GX with 200 HP, the biggest basic we've got, aside from Wishy-Washy, that can attack for a DCE. So you get a DCE down, and you get your Diancie on the bench, you're taking out all the basics, weakness or not. You're going to be trying to get your fighting energy in the discard pile early on. So if you can do that your first turn, maybe Ultra Ball away or something, you have 2 fighting energy in the discard pile, you use this attack. Your second attack, which requires 4 energy, is set up. Just like that. Turn 2, you have 4 energy attached to this guy. And he's swinging for 130 with his second attack, which one-shots a Zoroark. If you have Diancie out, if you have Choice Band, you're swinging for 180. So really, really solid numbers. Looking at the next attack, which is his GX, he does 150 damage. And Judgment GX, 150 damage. During your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes no damage from the attacks of your opponent's Pokemon GX and Pokemon EX. So he becomes immune to all attacks from, or at least the damage, from EXs and GXs. Buying yourself a turn from an EX or GX deck is insanely good. They have to gust around you and go for something else. This guy still stays alive. Okay, and we haven't even gotten to Bonnie yet, but I gotta spoil it because that's what makes this card good. Bonnie is a supporter that allows Zygarde to use its GX attack more times. When you play Bonnie down, Zygarde GX can use its GX attack even if you've already used a GX attack. No matter whose GX attack you've used, you can use Zygarde's again. So you can cycle this GX and do 180, 200 damage with Diancie, just insanely high numbers over and over and over. And oh yeah, they can't attack you. I don't see how this isn't a good card. It's almost too good. It's broken. It's gonna be a really solid card. So very high playability. Flexibility is only medium because it's only gonna go in fighting decks, or I can see it really well going with Zoroark, dumping some energy to help set up. It's gonna be a good card with those guys. Individuality very high. Whatever deck this is in, it's gonna be the core because you're gonna want to focus Bonnie around it. Go heavy on Bonnie and just set this thing up to hit some solid numbers consistently and defend itself. Like it's bad enough it's already got 200 HP, so it's really tough to take out to begin with. But then you're gonna make it to where you can't even attack. So even if you wanted to, you can't take me out. Like it's so good, so good. This is a Master Ball card. Get this card. It's busted. Absolutely busted. Really solid card. Yeah, there's no other way I can say it's busted. It's busted. So, moving on. Diancie Prism Star, that we've been talking about this whole time. So, the the ability, Princess Veil, if this Pokemon is on your bench, your fighting Pokemon's attacks do 20 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So, right there, it's already better than Regirock EX. Regirock EX, it would take 2 of them to do what 1 Diancie does, and those each give up 2 prizes as support Pokemon. This gives up 1, has a less retreat cost. It's already good. The attack is actually not too bad either. 3 fighting, Diamond Rain, 90 damage, heal 30 damage from each of your bench Pokemon. You can do some healing if you need to, but it also is a great non-GX attacker in certain situations if you need it. Choice Band, up to 120. You're taking out Zoroarks if you need to. But really, you're just going to be using it for the ability, which is solid enough. I mean, that takes all of our fighting decks just up a notch. And to be able to only use 1 bench space to do 20 as opposed to 10, and only give up 1 prize as opposed to 2, is just really, really solid. I think Diancie is going to see a lot of play. It's very playable. Low flexibility. It's only going to be in those fighting decks. And very low individuality. It's a Prism Star. But this is still going to be a really great card. This is an Ultra Ball. When you get this from your packs, or if you get the chance to buy one, keep it. This would be a solid card for sure. Next, moving on, we have another Baby Lycanroc because they don't print enough of these guys. For fighting colorless energy, Dangerous Rogue, 20 plus damage. This attack does 20 more damage for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. And then Axelrock, fighting colorless, 100 damage. It's decent. It's okay. I could see it in certain situations where you need like a non-GX Pokemon to do some damage, but honestly there's some better non-GX fighting Pokemon I'd rather use currently, but I could definitely see this working. The problem is it would only work in a deck that runs Lycanroc. It's very, very low flexibility. It has to have Lycanroc in it. So playability is medium. Individuality, you're not going to have it as its own deck. This just, it's a Pokeball. It's like all the other Lycanrocs, but potentially a little bit better, maybe against Zoroark. But there's other cards I'd rather use. Moving on, Yveltal GX, the worst GX in the game. Spoilers, it's awful. For 1 Dark Energy, Absorb Life, 20 damage. Heal from this Pokemon the same amount of damage you did to your opponent's active Pokemon, so potentially 100 if you hit for weakness, which isn't very common. So most likely 20 to 50. And I have a really good feeling that whoever is attacking you is probably just going to try to one-shot you. So not very good there. Evil Sonic, 3 colorless, 100 damage. His attack's damage isn't affected by weakness or resistance. So even if you're weak to me, 100 is all that's going to happen. I can't even hit for weakness on this attack. It's just garbage. Death Count GX is the only redeeming quality. If your opponent's active Pokemon has exactly 4 damage counters on it, it is knocked out. And even then, way too specific. Only getting 4 damage counters on a Pokemon, it's super specific, and you can do it one time, and that's it. After that, this card's pretty much dead. So very low playability, very low flexibility, and very low individuality. And on top of that, I mean, when Yveltal EX was out, it was only 170 HP. This only bumped up 10 HP. So it's not like it bumped it up to 190, which I know 180 and 190 doesn't sound far off, but it's a big difference. To bump it up to 190 would just make a lot bigger difference. And if these attacks were just slightly better, excuse me, just slightly better, I still don't think that would even bump it up too high. So we're looking at a Pokeball for sure, and I feel generous giving it even a Pokeball. Moving on, Guzzlord. This is kind of in the same camp as Yveltal GX. For 4 Darkness Energy, does 160 damage. If you have 6, 4, or 2 prize cards remaining, discard the top 10 cards of your deck. So you gotta hope that you have 1, 3, or 5 prize cards remaining, which means you have to play the 7 prize card game, and no one likes doing that. And if I'm not at the 7 prize card game, I have to discard 10 cards from my own deck. That's just dumb. I don't want to discard from my own deck. There's no reason for me to discard from my own deck. This Pokemon has 4 retreat costs. It's weak to fighting. It's not good. It's not a good card. Very low across the board. This gets a Pokeball. Don't waste your time. Next, moving on to the Sylveon that everyone was so hyped about when it came out. I was never very hyped, and I'm still not very hyped. The first attack for a colorless, Wink. Your opponent reveals their hand. You may discard a supporter card you find there. If you do, use the effect of that supporter as the effect of this attack. I can see that having uses in some cases. Not so much for you being able to use the supporter, but more so for your opponent not being able to. So it's kind of disruptive in that sense. But that's the thing, it's only disruptive. It's not going to play very well as any other type of card. Mill decks are getting a little big right now, but in a Sylveon deck, I'd rather play Sylveon differently than to use this one. I'd rather be Magical Ribboning and things like that. And that's the other thing. If you're going to play this in a Mill deck, it has to be Sylveon. There's no other option, really. Unless you want to try to tech in an Eevee line to another Mill deck, it just doesn't make much sense. So medium playability, and that's just because it has the Sylveon deck. Very low flexibility, very low individuality. This gets a Pokeball. I know some Mill players out there are going to crucify me for saying that. I just not a huge fan of this card. Next, looking at Xerneas GX, not too much better than Yveltal, but a little bit. Run through for 1 colorless, 20 damage. This attack does 20 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Coco does it better. Then Aurora Horn, 120 damage. Fairy, colorless. And then Sanctuary GX with same attack cost. Move all damage counters from each of your Pokemon to your opponent's active Pokemon. That GX is actually really solid, especially if you're playing against some sort of spread or someone that hasn't been able to knock you out. You're healing off all that damage, and you're knocking out something. You should be knocking out something. The only way that I see this getting really, really solid, well, I bumped ahead to the score. The only way I see this getting really, really solid is if Ultra Necrozma just becomes busted, which is possible, so that this can hit something for weakness. Other than that, I don't see it being super good. I mean, 120 is not bad, but again, for 3 energy versus what we have on the 1 or 2 energy attack costs of Zoroark and Gliscopod and Lucario. It's just much better. So this low across the field, flexibility very low, and we're looking at a Pokeball for this one. Then Ultra Necrozma, as I was just talking about, super hyped about this card. This was one that I talked about will pair very nicely with Malamar. Looking at the attacks, first one, Photon Geyser for a Psychic and Metal, 20 plus damage, discard all basic Psychic energy from this Pokemon. This attack does 80 more damage for each energy card discarded in this way. And so that's going to be your main attack. If you're doing some math, you're doing a base of 20, you discard 1 Psychic energy, you're doing 100 damage right off the bat. And for 2 energy, that's not bad, especially if they can be accelerated on there with Malamar. And then from there, it just gets bigger and bigger. So for 2 Psychic energy discarded, which is 3 total energy attached, it's 180 damage. Choice Band, 210. That's all you need. That's all. You don't need any more energy discarded from that. If you do, you're swinging for 260, and then it's just off the charts. So 4 energy attached, 260. That's better than Duskmane. Okay, I mean it's insane, and it's not even a GX. It's repetitive over and over and over. The GX to me is actually a little bit less exciting than the main attack. You put 6 damage counters on all of your opponent's Pokemon in play, so that could be good if you get set up really quickly and they fill up their bench with a bunch of basics early on. You can take things out. Oh, I'm sorry, it wouldn't be early because there has to be 6 prize cards remaining between both of you. So this would be a mid to late game GX attack, but you could still find some random basics sitting out there, or you could be cleaning up the field. But honestly, with the way that first attack is, as long as you set up at all, it's just, you're gonna go off. Also, not only will this do well with Malamar, but honestly, I'm gonna be giving it a try with Metagross, because Metagross can accelerate Psychic or Metal from the discard as well. And you only need a couple of them. So I'm looking at this and thinking, Bulu does well with a stage 2, so why couldn't Ultra Necrozma do well with the stage 2 support? Honestly, this would be better because if you need to hit Metal weakness, if for some reason you're up against something that is weak to Metal, actually Xerneas. So if this gets really good and then something like a Xerneas gets really good, and honestly I would look at Gardevoir again if this got really insane. If Gardevoir tried to crop back up to hit weakness on this, you play it with Metagross. Metagross counters the Guardy, so you're good. So to me, I would kind of look at that option as well. I think that might almost be a better option, depending on the meta. Really depends on the meta. But those are 2 very strong options with this card, using either Metagross or Malamar, and you better believe I will be profiling both of them on the channel for you guys. So be on the lookout for those around May. So playability very high, flexibility medium, because we only mentioned 2 different types of decks that it could go with, but that's still pretty solid. Individuality very high. This is going to be the core of your decks. This is a Master Ball card. You better pick up your playset now, because this card is going to it's going to take the format by storm. I mean, it's just going to be insanely good. So be on the lookout. The only thing that's keeping it from being absolutely broken is that it doesn't hit weakness, which it still hits insanely good numbers. So moving on, Noibat, not Noivern, Noibat. The reason we're looking at it is because this, to me, is something that will pair very nicely with with Trashlange Garbodor, or pretty much any disruptive deck. So you'd be looking at the second attack, Destructive Sound for DCE. Look at your opponent's hand, discard all item cards you find there. So as opposed to having to count on your opponent to use their item cards or to discard their item cards, you can just do it for them and guarantee that you're getting the damage output for Trashlange, and at the same time you're preventing them from using those. So it's like before, like they get damaged for using them, but hey, they at least got to use them to advance their board state. But with Noibat, you just come out and go, no, you can't have those. They're discarded. Not that they're shuffled. They're discarded. You can't touch them. I mean, you can puzzle them back, but that's still a puzzle, which still does damage. So I think that this card could be really good with that. I'm not going to say it's broken or, going to just make Trashlange so much better, but I think it could be good. And for any type of like mill deck, I would consider trying this guy out in there. because he could accelerate things because your opponent will try to N or Cynthia to try to preserve their cards. But if you can dump those, then you're reducing the pool that they have to set things up and to keep their deck going longer. And then, we'll look at Noivern too, because there's always a potential to toss in a Noivern if you're playing Noibat. Supersonic does 20 damage, your opponent's active Pokemon is not confused. And then 3 colorless, Resonance, 70 plus damage if the defending Pokemon is confused. This attack does 70 more damage, that's 140. With a Choice Band, that's 170, that's Lele. And if you already confused them, they could potentially flip and knock themselves out. So, not bad to consider using both of them. And so they get a Great Ball. Sorry, almost skipped that. So medium playability, very high flexibility, very low individuality. Great Ball, this could be good, and I would consider teching it into a Trash Alliance deck. Moving on, Entraporter. This card is very lackluster in my opinion. Move a special energy from one of your opponent's Pokemon to another one of their Pokemon. I would much rather just E-Hammer it. The only way I could see this being good is if I moved special energy from a very valuable Pokemon to an Octillery or some support Pokemon that is not going to be attacking, because it can't. But again, E-Hammer to me just does it much better. I'd rather just dump that energy, get it out of play, and move on. Because, Entraporter, I'm going to move it to an Octillery. I'm probably going to knock out the Octillery anyway, so why not just play an E-Hammer and guarantee that, and then I can knock something else out. So playability to me is medium. Staple level is low. I wouldn't focus too much on this card, and the necessity is pretty low to get it. I'd say Pokeball at this point. I could be wrong about that. Someone could come up with something insane with a mill deck, but to me right now, this is just not great. Moving on, Fossil Excavation Kit. Excuse me. I'm super excited about this card. Like I said, I've been messing with a lot of the fossils. I'm excited for Tyrantrum coming out, and this makes the fossils better. You get to search your deck or discard pile for one unidentified fossil card, show it to your opponent, and put it into your hand. If you search your deck, shuffle it. So this allows you to search not only your deck, but also your discard pile. So you don't have to puzzle back your fossils anymore. You can use this. It's essentially a free Ultra Ball to go search out your fossils, which is great. That's exactly what these fossils needed, because before the toughest thing was for people to get their fossils out. You don't want to use a Skyla for it. I've been using Order Pad, and that's not always a guarantee. This is going to replace all my Order Pads in my decks. So to me, medium playability, very low staple level because it's just for the fossils, and low necessity. But if you do play it, I would say high necessity if you're a fossil player. This is a great ball. This makes fossils better and potentially playable in the future. Next, looking at Mystery Treasure, I think I'm most excited about this item card out of all of our trainers. So what it is, it's essentially an Ultra Ball, but you only have to discard one item or one card, whatever card. But it only searches out Psychic or Dragon Pokemon. However, right now we're seeing lots of Psychic Pokemon. Lele's in every deck. If you want to up your chances of getting Lele and only having to dump one card as opposed to two, that'd be an option. Personally for me, when I did my Ultra Squids deck, I just put in Mystery Treasure. I took out all my Ultra Balls because everything in that deck is either Psychic or Dragon. There's no point for me to play Ultra Ball. The whole point is for me to play, or the whole thing is I'm just searching for my Psychic and Dragon Pokemon, so I can just use this card. I get rid of fewer resources. I know you want to get discard or energy in the discard, but you only need just a little bit. So eventually you're going to be dumping things that aren't energy, and that could cause problems. So to me, Mystery Treasure is definitely a solid replacement in certain decks. Looking forward to the future. So for me, playability is very high, staple level is going to be high, and necessity is very high. This is a Master Ball card. It's going to be solid. Like I said, you can even toss some into decks just to get your Lele's if you're trying to preserve things, and then later on in the game you can just avoid using your Ultra Balls, dump them, and move on. Next, we are looking at the final supporters. Lady, this is basically Fisherman, except Fisherman you get the 4 energy from your discard pile. Lady gets them from your deck. To me, Fisherman doesn't see a ton of play. I know we see a little bit with Duskmane, but we see like a 1 or 2 of in that. So playability is medium for this, low staple level. This isn't going to be in a bunch of decks. Could have been good with Gardevoir if Gardevoir was still around, and that could crop back up again. Maybe this makes it better. and necessity to me is low. So right now this is a Pokeball to me, but there could be some deck in the future that really just kind of pushes this over the top. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe this will go really, really well with Duskmane. Next, looking at Diantha, this you cannot play unless one of your fairy Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn. So that's a downside. It does have to be knocked out, but then you get to choose 2 cards from your discard pile and put them into your hand. So it's a little similar to Teammates, except it's very specific. It has to come from your discard, not from your deck, so that kind of sucks. And it has to be fairy type, so it's not going to go into every deck. So very low playability, very low staple level, very low necessity. Like, it's just not a great card in my opinion, because right now there's not a lot of fairy around. If fairy got big again, maybe if Gardevoir makes a resurgence, then absolutely throw this card into Guardy, or whatever fairy deck you can think of. There's not a ton right now. In fact, I really don't think there's any except for like Guardy Zoro. And there's just better options for cards. So this gets a Pokeball for now. And then we're looking at Lysander Prism Star. This is actually a pretty cool Prism Star card, if you ask me. For each of your fire Pokemon in play, put the same number of cards from your opponent's discard pile into their lost zone. So this is solid. Like, if you look at your fire decks, yes, you'll probably have a Leyliner bench. Maybe you have an Oranguru or something. But then the rest of your bench is, 3 other fire Pokemon. I know this doesn't sound great, but you still get to take 3 of their cards from their discard pile and just say you can't get those back. So if it's an all special energy deck and they've got some DCEs in there, just chuck them. Remove any possibility of them being able to attack you, and you pretty much win the game at that point. You don't have to meet anything super specific on this. It just has to be in a fire deck. So that kind of hinders it a little bit, but I still say the playability is very high because fire is getting a little bit of love right now. You've got Ho-Oh doing fairly well, and that's going to fill up its bench with fire Pokemon. So to me, I'd say it's very high playability. Oh, very low. Oh, I just pulled my desk apart. Very low staple level, because it has to be just a fire deck, so it's not going to go in every deck. But I would say necessity is high. I would say pick this card up. It's an Ultra Ball to me. It's one thing to discard cards. It's another thing to put them in the lost zone to where you can never get them back. I think it's really going to shake things up in the meta, especially if fire shows up a little bit more. And then Bonnie, we talked about Bonnie a little bit already. If there's a Stadium card in play, then your Zygarde GX can use its GX attack, even if a GX attack has already been used. Plain and simple. Really solid. This is like broken, in my opinion. The point of a GX attack is it's so good that you should only be able to use it once. But Bonnie says, no, you can use as much as you want. And when it hits the number that it hits, and then also prevents damage being done, it's just so good, and it makes it really solid. So very high playability, very low staple level though. It's only going to go into Zygarde decks, but very high necessity. I would pick this up as well. This is an Ultra Ball card for sure. Then Lysander Labs, we talked about this a little bit before. It is a Stadium. This card stays in play. Oh, sorry, I'm reading the wrong part. Pokemon tools in play have no effect, both yours and your opponent's. So choice bands, float stones, escape boards, fury belts, they're pointless. They don't do anything. And problem is, the deck that this really goes with would be Pyroar, but we talked about Pyroar and it's not fantastic. The only other options I could think of is if you play it in a deck that they don't really need tool cards. For example, Duskmane. You really don't need choice bands or really float stones in there because you're okay with dumping your energy because you can get it back, but you really only get it back with either Fisherman or Mount Coronet. So that's the problem. It doesn't need tools, so this Stadium would be okay, but it needs a different Stadium. So to me, the playability for this card is low. Staple level is very low. Necessity is low. Maybe if there's another Pokemon that comes out in the future that can hit the right numbers and doesn't need tools, then this card will definitely show up for them. But right now, it is a Pokeball and not that great. Moving on to the last card, our final unit energy has been released. It is Fighting, Darkness, and Fairy typing. And at first glance, it looks really good because that's 3 of the best types right now, or at least they were at one point. The problem is most of those you wouldn't want to use this type of energy. Zoroark, you're really not going to be focusing on using the darkness energy very much. It's more, it goes in a deck where you just strap on a DCE and you're good to go. If I'm attaching a special energy to a fighting Pokemon, it's going to be a strong energy right now, or potentially a DCE on like a Lycanroc. And as far as Fairy goes, again, if I'm attaching a special energy, it's going to be a DCE, and if I'm using Guardy, I'll use my Secret Spring to put on a basic energy. So to me, it's not great. Maybe eventually, if we see some one energy attackers that do some solid damage, this will do great. So for now, medium playability, very low staple level. It's obviously specific to these 3 types, and even then, it's not getting played right now. Well, it's not out yet, but it won't be getting played. And then necessity level is very low. To me, this is a Pokeball, kind of a downer way to end it. But to me, I would rather play the Grass, Fire, Water one. There's much more utility in that than there is in this card. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening to this set review. I really hope that it has helped you to kind of get an idea of what's coming up on May the 4th, besides the Star Wars Marathon. But you should be able to now compile a pretty solid list of cards that you need. If I could, I'd like to suggest that you go to deaddrawgaming.com, have those guys help you out getting your pre-orders in. They're taking pre-orders for boxes, for singles. They do really solid deals, so go to them. They have great selection. They will be able to help you out with those singles for this next set. You'll be ready to go for your cups, your challenges, for internationals, and for worlds, which are right around the corner. So as usual, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Please be sure to leave a comment for me. Say, hey, let me know what your favorite card from this set is, whether it's one I reviewed or not. And then as usual, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time with probably some more deck profiles, hopefully within the next week or so. And as usual, I've been Jordan with the Deck Box, where I want to know what's in your box. Have a great night, guys.